what it put, and it led me back.
So,
Oh, so
is
yeah.
Dana left already?
Yes.
Okay.
Still have.
Email address anymore? I got an email.
No, it's.
Saying goodbye.
Yeah.
Oh,
my gosh.
I haven't seen that one.
If anything about what's happening in Canada right now, so how can all go side is scary. That's what I actually think about it. Frankly, a little bit. It doesn't take much.
Yeah.
So what part were you involved with?
Did you read about Operation Dingo?
When they dropped into the, is that when they attacked the two beaches?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it will for all things.
Yeah.
So we talked about doing this split in the park, and I used to get people from their own practice, like, the targets and what
And we used to go.
Oh, shoot.
Seemed like there was lots of civilians.
Morning.
Probably don't so blue.
Campbell Street. Oh, Neil Street.
You know about our information. I did, yeah, thank you. I just emailed you. I went to.
Stay outside and shoot you.
So talking that on the 17th, I would like go to the, I'm at a trade show.
Oh,
Those two.
okay. Well, I bet there'll be interest from someone else.
Okay, you're for hotels for the February one?
We are booked apparently. And Jamie, I explained to Jamie that if she could find one or two videos. I'll talk to her after the meeting or at
I don't know.
we do for the LGLA.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's gonna be just about. You can. I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
Okay, my to-do list. Good morning, Counselor Anderson. So you'll be chairing the reminder. Huh?
Yeah, no, I did open all the links, but,
Yeah, always. The other night, because I wanted to, that's actually July 10th, so it's the old council, but I just needed to remember how something
but I
was
didn't
said.
like to
Oh my
see.
gosh, the radio!
That wasn't.
Yeah, it was great. Good bad. Good bad. It was good. It was confirmed my memory. So that
An account on having.
like yours and Josh's?
Yeah. I don't know if that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that would be
a
Yeah, it was like, I can't, and you can't really see that very well, so it's really not. It's not that.
I can
Very good voice. Still groggy. I woke up like at 4 in the morning.
Oh, right.
And get back to sleep.
Actually, the car went up. I couldn't have gone back to sleep if I wanted to, so it started with chainsaws.
Oh, I know, I was thinking the chainsaws are really quiet. When you start to like, my staff are all
It only got about 10 minutes.
exactly what you guys are doing.
The only way you know in here is Jenny is. And the heat gets
I think that clock is still 1 minute slow, but I'm gonna.
Mine's on ours.
He's finishing his cigarette.
Yes.
Andrew Bailey might be in control.
Yeah, I remember.
Andrew Bailey might be in control of that clock. In fact, he's holding a phone right now. I'm pretty sure that's what he's doing. Let's dial it back. I'm not quite done with cigarette. We're not, okay, we're recording it, right? Pretty much. Okay. that we're conducting our business today in Tloquit territory. I will ask first, please, for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved and seconded. All in favor? None opposed? Motion carried. No public comment on agenda items, I don't think. There was no sign up. Great, good morning. I have just one report to make, but really it's not a report so much as it is a sincere expression of gratitude. And I wanted to comment on the windstorm that we had before Christmas and the fact that our power here in Topeka a little bit shorter for others. And there have been a lot of very deserving gratitude that's been given to BC Hydro for the extensive efforts that they made to get our community back into power. But I think what is a little less commonly known is just how much work our public works, our outside staff do, and that our inside staff are to others, the public especially. The fact that we have a water and sewer system that rely on power, and so every time we turn on the taps and we flush our toilets, that's because we have power. And when the power went out, that meant that about 17 generators on 18 different lift stations automatically came to life, and then one had to be an extra generator needed to be. That meant our staff had to be out there monitoring the generators, refilling them with fuel, and when 5 of them experienced different kinds of problems, they had to figure out how to fix that so we could keep flushing our toilets and drinking water. They also, was just a freak that at the same time we had some issues with our Bay Street water station, taking care of problems that normally maybe wouldn't be so much of a problem, but during the extended power outage it just became that much more challenging. So our crews had the amount of communication that had to go out, letting the public know what was going on, meant that they had to take time away from their regular jobs and do that to serve the community. And so I want to extend my thank you, and on behalf of council, a very sincere expression of gratitude to all of our staff who were so instrumental in making us sure that we could drink our water and flush our toilets. So thank you, everybody. From Samantha Hackett for the West Coast Multiplex Society. So welcome, Samantha.
Thank you. There was an attachment, and it's up there, but does anyone want a hard copy? So I do have there's Wonderful. Well, thank you all this morning for taking the opportunity to receive this update from myself and Tloquit West Coast locals that over the last two decades have given a lot of blood, sweat, and tears bringing a multiplex to reality, all as volunteers through that time. But I'm also here today on behalf of Tloquit First Nations who are working with the Society to secure the capital funding for phase this morning and was not able to attend. But thank you, Eli Enns, for attending on his behalf. So in the handout provided in the agenda and just to you this morning, it provides basically just an executive summary of the project, a little bit of background and summary of the work that's been completed. But I am going to go over a little bit of it. The West Coast communities, 8 communities, under the persistence and dedication of the West Coast Multiplex Society, with of course consultation with local governments, First Nations, and the ACRD, have been in pursuit of a shared recreation facility for the West Coast. This represents an exciting and unique opportunity with an MOU between 5 First Nations, Ucluelet First Nation, Tokwat First Nation, District of Ucluelet, Ahousaht First Nation, Heshkuyut First Nation, District of Tofino, and Alberni-Clackahout Regional District. The Society has and continues to work hard to ensure that this facility will incorporate the needs of all of us and achieved the area. Prior to the successful referendum, the project was planned for a phased approach, with a smaller initial investment followed by subsequent phases addressing a pool and other possibilities. While this wasn't completely endorsed, as some of course do want a pool first, the board genuinely believes that this approach was necessary to make these. The ACRD confirmed that the location of the proposed multiplex facility would be on ACRD property along Airport Road, so just along Airport Road on the right-hand side. Over the last 2 years, the Society has worked with Tloquit First Nations to secure assistance to revise the business plan and capital cost estimates. Tloquit was instrumental in acquiring, which we then completed the updated business plan and estimates for the capital and operating costs for the arena portion of the multiplex. The business plan specifically identified an opportunity for TFN to manage the facility, which would be great economic, training, and employment opportunity for Tloquit. Phase 1 of the multiplex, celebrations, gatherings, events, including family and community events, festivals, arts and culture, and would be a great public art space, especially for carving. It is also a great opportunity for a high emergency, many other potential additional amenities and phases. We believe, the Society and Tloquit First Nations, that if we work together, then this much needed facility can become a reality for all of us and our children. Recently, we've become aware of the opportunity to apply for the Canada Infrastructure Program. This new program will pay for up to 90% of the project through with the Honourable Scott Fraser, our Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation of British Columbia. He is very much in support of this project, and our MP Gord Johns, as past chair of the Society, is also very much in support. Accordingly, Tloquit is taking a lead role in conjunction with the 4 other First Nations, the Alberni-Clapart Regional District, the districts of Tofino and Yukon. The application must be submitted by January 23rd, which I know you're also very familiar with the application. So we are on a tight timeline, of course, to make this happen. Tloquit are working with David Nairn Associates, otherwise known as DNA, and of course the Society to submit the actual grant application itself. Once built, we do have the referendum in plus 1,000 per year. And based on the business plan that was conducted for phase 1, the deficit would be at a maximum, at a very conservative number of $350,000. It didn't take into account things like sponsorships, advertising, event revenue, and it didn't take into account all of these opportunities, and more specifically the grant opportunities working together on the West Coast and the type of facility that it is. The West Coast Committee, including Josie on behalf of Tofino Council, gave direction last February for the Society to explore capital funding opportunities, and I'd of course like to thank Mayor Osborne for her support for the project and help through this process on this very tight timeline. The land is in place. I thank you all again for the opportunity to update. The Society and Tloquit First Nations asked Tofino Council to continue to recognize the enormous contribution to the health and well-being and many other benefits that this phased approach to eventual multifaceted facility will bring to the West Coast. And we look forward to your assistance in promoting this at every opportunity.
Thanks, Sam. The nation's very much in support of this initiative, clearly. The fact that you have a variety of First Nations and non-First Nations communities working together around a shared interest around youth and health, I think it hits all of the reconciliation and action that the nation wants to forward with our neighbors. We also are always thinking long-term, and we see the development at the airport lands as something that could potentially be a key to moving other. Thank you, Sam, for all of your hard work on this, and look forward to working with all of you to make it a reality.
Thank you very much, both of you. So I'll open it up to council if you have any questions about the delegation. Any questions? We will be addressing the multiplex later on the agenda because of the
for coming to our board meeting last night.
Great.
That maybe was an opportunity for some of those questions as well. So
good.
Thank
you very much. Thank you. Okay. All right, we're going to move into the correspondence section of our agenda now. And the first is a letter from local resident, John, which looks different now than it did before the storm. And so maybe first, actually, if we could get an update, if there is any update from staff. I know you've reviewed the letter, and I'm sure that you have thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. As of this morning, there are probably 14 school property. There's a very narrow strip of it that is actually district property, but the bulk of it is where the trailers are, is the school property. Of the 14 trailers, there is 10 of them that have either no license plates or no insurance. That has been how it's been used. As far as the suggestion of us making it pay parking and providing the money back to the school, it's not necessarily our property to do that with as we look at it. So I think at this point, needing some direction from the school, if it's a concern for them, it's kind of a challenging one to deal with because it's not without having some direction from the school because it is primarily private property.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it's understandable that there's a public perception that that is district property, and we have had letters about it in the past and made decisions, and maybe other councils will remember, we had some talk about the need for, we had a letter last year about the lack of boat trailer parking, and oh yeah, if you want to park your trailer up there for the day, you can. And I don't know if we engaged the school in dialogue then?
At that point, I wasn't familiar with it at that point. I know that it's been ongoing like this for quite some time from my recollection. But just prior to this past summer, I did connect the 4th Street Harbor Master with Drew Ryan, the principal from the school, parking passes for use of the actual parking lot at the school during the summer months. So that's a conversation that their thoughts are, but it doesn't move very quickly. So it's still waiting to see really what they would like to do in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, thank you. Others?
I just have a quick question, Brent. What section of that area is actually district?
From reviewing the GIS information. Yeah.
We could then regulate parallel parking if we wished, but...
Absolutely, and we've, Bob and I have had discussions about the possibility of putting if there is going to be allowable trailer parking there, making it 24-hour maximum so that it can be enforced. But we get trailers there, we get vehicles abandoned there. 4th Street is a bit of an issue for if you don't have insurance that are there in the upper areas and that it's a common area. So when you speak with the residents, some of them have reported they're happy that the boat trailers are there because it means that RVers aren't there and therefore people are not using the ball field as a restroom. So a couple have asked me not to do anything about the trailers that are there. So it's always a balancing act. But
I want to say that I'm glad there's attention paid to this. I just don't want to be talking. The letter, I think, kind of invites both acknowledgement that we've received it, some of the information you gave, but also perhaps a referral to the school. I don't know if that needs to be a motion.
Well, I mean, it sounds like staff's already engaging with the school district, but we did get a letter to us, and so I think it would be valid to just consider a motion that we refer the letter back to staff.
Motion that we refer the letter back to staff and that they continue their work towards solutions on the parking of boat trailers in this area.
With school district
With the school district 70. And inform the letter writer that work is being done on the problem.
And I've spoken with the letter writer as well too, and assured in that we have made space at the impound lot, and if the school wishes them gone, once the trees are removed from that area, because currently nothing can be moved out of there. There's trees over top of a number of them, but once the trees are removed, they can be all impounded the same day if the school wishes them gone. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So it looks none. Motion carried.
Thank you. So as you may know, we have had presentations and concerns about tree removal. So when I hear tree removal, it sets up a bit of a red flag. Could you explain a bit about what you're talking about? It sounds like tree removal is a certainty. Is there a reason?
Downed trees. So
downed tree removal.
During the wind spat, so they've been cleared off the street, but they're still very much barricading that whole section.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Okay, we'll move on then. So our next letter is from the Legislative Assembly of BC regarding the call for written submissions to the Select Standing Committee on Crown Corporations and specifically. So I had a very quick conversation with our manager of community sustainability, and I think we're both of the opinion that despite the fact Tofino seems like a really small place, they're still worthy. It's still worthy for us to consider responding to this and adding our voice to it. Yes.
Well, I'd like to hear more about that then, but I don't know whether we need a report from staff or just a verbal right now, and how we might go about adding our voice and what kind of things we would say.
A really quick little verbal, I do have another council meeting before then, so we could bring a draft on the 22nd. All right, then we'll move into our last piece of correspondence, which is a letter from TELUS saying, welcome. Thank you, TELUS. Any questions, comments? No? Okay, good. Then we'll move into our reports to council. And we'll continue to declare a conflict because of the proximity of these properties to mine, and pass it over to Councillor Anderson, who's conveniently sitting right next to me.
It's still January.
I'll take one.
Okay, so we're on item 8.1, and we have a recommendation and a second part to it that does anyone want to move that? Or sorry, Aaron, you were going to speak.
Sure. I have a brief presentation. I think it's more of a reminder of where we're at point, I think 2 other times before today.
Excuse me, I thought we were doing 1048. Campbell.
Okay, first?
Yeah, that's not the agenda.
It's the first one.
They really look similar. Great. I just didn't know what I just said. Is it? Oh, it's not in? Yeah, it's in there. Yeah, I would have caught that. Great. Again, so just run through a quick background. We received the application in August 2017. It went through our development process, and most recently we had a public information session and public hearing on December 11th, 2018. Again, location, 10 subdivision. This is the aerial view of the existing site. It's currently zoned A1. The proposal again is to create 2 1-acre lots. The proposed zone will be RA2, so we'd be zoning from A1 to RA2. Here's a brief comparison of the lots, and also of I don't know if there are any questions about that. Again, considerations that we've looked at: land use, access, servicing, character, ecosystems. We'll go through a site survey and referrals and community amenity contribution conversations. So before it's fairly basic, we're here to proposal until such time as the applicant has submitted the community amenity contributions. And once we receive that, we'll be bringing back the report for final reading.
So referring back to the agenda, does anyone care to speak to that or move it?
And it'll apply to both properties. And it has to do with, you know, our reticence in some ways to create a significant tree bylaw, because, you know, from storms and these kinds of conditions, you know, we're vulnerable in some ways when we don't have a really strong and contiguous forest cover. There's even more channels for damage as a consequence of winds and such. And wind has, not by any legal requirement, but just has a lot of tree coverage. I just would like to see us find ways to have discussions with the applicants about trees on their properties and what their overall plan. I just point to it as an illustration of something where, again, as a municipality, we are possibly approving this application, which is, you know, a granting that would be good that we had in return. However, so I'll make the recommendation that the District of Tofino Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1/2018 be sorry, is that correct? No. Yeah, withheld until the following requirements have been met to the satisfaction of the manager of community sustainability. A, receipt of community amenity contributions.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Has it been,
Just double check, but I think I believe it's $2,000. So the way the community amenity contribution policy is developed is that it's less, there's less impact from residential development than there's commercial development. So you'll see in rezonings for residential developments a lower figure. It's laid out in the policy, but I don't believe there's a discount on this one. So I believe it's $2,000.
Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. And item 8.2, 1054, Campbell.
The difference with this application is that there's a variance required to address a setback issue on one corner of a cabin. And so, as I understand, the applicants applied for that DVP yesterday, and so I'm going to process that DVP prior to coming to council for final reading, if it gets to the reading. We had a public information session and public hearing on the 11th of last year. The location is adjacent to the previous property at 54 Campbell. The site again is a street site. It's about 2.5 acres. There's this existing single family home and caretaker's cottage. There's the purposes of rezoning. We're lit up in the corner where the cabin is, the top center of the TV there. You'll see where the cabin encroaches into a setback, and that's what the purpose of the variance will be. Again, just a comparison of witness considerations, so that is with most applications, and I think you're fairly familiar with that. We have some options in front of us. Staff is recommending that we move forward with third reading and then wait for final reading for the receipt of the CACs and for the DVP to run its course. Just it from visual format and you say DVP. That's it.
I'll move the recommendation that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1242/2018 be read a third time, and that adoption of the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1242/2018 be withheld until the following requirements have been: receipt of community amenity contributions, 2, receipt of council of a development variance application for consideration regarding the minimum side yard setback for the existing caretaker's cabin.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion. All in favor? It's time to
Get the boss back in.
get the chair.
I'm walking really slow because Counselor's here.
He does.
Concerning second reading for 210 Neil Street, and staff are recommending staff is recommending second reading with an amendment that I'll mention in the presentation, as well as requesting a date. That little bit of background, this began in 2016. There were 2 TUPs on the property. The final TUP expired late last year, on the 27th of December. The zoning received first reading on July 10th. This proposal is at the end of the street, adjacent to the hospital at 210. It's not a 67-acre site, but it's a relatively large site, zoned for 2-family residential, R2. You can see that the white building in the middle was built as a duplex. The tourist accommodation use, 3 sleeping units for staff and comm. There is a proposal from the applicant that these be 1-week stays, but that is not restricted in the zoning bylaw. It's just part of the applicant's proposal. And then there'd be accessory services for guests, such as exercise, activities, health, and cooking. It's intended and health-centered. Although, again, that while discussed in the preamble to the bylaw, is not actually will not actually be regulated in the bylaw. As with all our other proposals, we go through the OCP, look at the various policies and areas. This proposal meets up with the OCP. We've also, this project is in line with those. So for second reading, just want to explain again that the TP has expired. So there is some sense of urgency at some level to move this forward if that's council's wish. We need to make an amendment, proposing at this point to amend the zoning that's in front of you now to reflect council's previous resolution, and I believe Mayor Osborne has a has a wording that we can read out when we get to that point. Again, so the land use considerations, tourism commercial, neighborhood care, CACs, again, all part of the report, and something that the staff has reviewed intensively. Here's the proposed zoning bylaw. I'm not going to read it out, but happy to discuss it. So basically what we're doing is looking at a building that was developed as an R2 short-term rental over the years. As far as I'm aware, it's rarely been used for accommodation. This proposal also came to council earlier, about the same time we were looking at short-term rental projects, and so it sort of meets the OCP and the other plans. So basically we're going to be taking a very large R2 building and converting it to a hotel, provide staff housing. There'll be a significant amount of requirements in terms of building permits to bring the building into compliance with commercial zoning. As the building's not changing, there's a lot of the impacts that we would sort of look at through the planning process are unnecessary. So we know what the building size is, we know what the area is, we know what its height is. Those aren't proposed to change in any significant manner. So in front of council today we have some bylaw order for or otherwise deal with the bylaw. Following this, we'd be looking to go to for one of our public information sessions, a public hearing, and then potentially third reading and on with CACs. There's a vegetation covenant that we want to put in place along the neighboring property. So there you have.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a rezoning process that we're kind of partway through, but we've switched councilors and we have 3 new members of council, so I'm very much recognize that this is a new file for the 3 of you, and make sure that even though we might have discussed things in the past, that you understand why it's come to be how it is now. That's very vague. Councillor Chalmers.
I do have a question. The 3 units they've requested, actually, the admin staff, has that come up at all?
No, actually both Aaron and I have spoken to the proponent and they've said that's fine as it is read, yeah.
It's on Campbell Street that went through a process of trying to upgrade to commercial standards, and it was really a very onerous process, including underground cabling, and it's just like, where are we at in terms of that? Because
it's a good question, and I'm not familiar with which one.
Rod Cameron building.
Rod Cameron, 2012.
Yeah, something like that.
So the building was built under the BC Building Code whenever it was built. I think it was probably 2007 around, and it was built as a residential dwelling. So that comes with certain standards. When you develop a commercial building, especially a commercial accommodation building, the standard on from when that building was built 12 years ago, the code's also changed. And so if someone will be putting, if this use changes and we'll be putting people in that place, the building has to be upgraded to the standard of the code today. So whatever that means for the applicant is what it means for the applicant. So it may be quite costly. You're going to have to think about fire separation boards, probably not anything structural, apart from fire separations. The building inspector has been working with the applicant over the past 2 years through the TUP process to have this conversation, and there were some minor changes made to allow the TUP to process the first person requirements, and I know the building inspector has been in touch with the applicants about that already. There's no other way, we can't get around BC code.
No, I'm just, wanting to be sure that we're kind of contained within that, and not adding on other of the wish list such a cost. Just motivated by the repurposing of buildings has a long, honorable history in Tofino, and yes, we do need to meet building codes, but it also doesn't, it has to.
It's expensive for this to happen, but we don't add on anything in building code. We have no rights, no regulation, no authority to do so, and so we'd be welcoming a significant amount of liability onto the district as a whole in the future if something was to happen there that was a direct, response to something that we didn't do that we should have done. And so, we're getting a little bit more sophisticated in development and building applications, and we have these conversations quite early. It's not something that we engaged architects or possibly engineers to work with this, and that, again, Nicholas has been working with them for at least a year on these requirements. From it, so that we have tried to add some reasonableness into that, and it's the use for, it wasn't necessarily used as a hotel, it was used as a retreat or whatever, I can't even remember, I don't know what we actually termed it, but there was a bit of give there for us and for the TUP to get them operating as that. So Nicholas required health and safety requirements, so they need to have egress and access, they had to exit signs, so that the life safety standards were met, but the actual code now that we're going to change is permanently is the stuff that's going to be required.
Councilor Anderson?
I'm just wondering that you're saying there's some amendments to now, and was the hotel designation applied in the first zoning? Was it called? Okay.
Hotel is a big word in the code.
Yeah, it's a big word in Tofino.
As opposed to the use of the building as a place where people stay. And so we just have to make sure as we go down the road that we're naming these things appropriately and not getting too stuck into the subjective, what they're describing, where it's like wellness retreat, as opposed to, in the end, it's a hotel, whether it's for dogs or people or...
It's a comprehensive development zone that lists the use as hotel, but specifically excludes certain things, is because had we just considered rezoning it as a hotel use, it would have included all of those other things according to the definitions in our bylaw. So this is kind of like an amended hotel use zone, essentially, that excludes restaurant, excludes convention, excludes meetings, not meetings, maybe convention facilities and a pub, which another hotel like the Long Beach Lodge, they could have there if they wanted.
And yeah, you'll see a lot of the C5 zones.
Yeah.
You'll see that long list of accessory uses
Right.
that, many resorts take advantage of. Which is
Yeah.
Just again on the same subject, if I may.
So the guest house is, again, I think we're all familiar with it, there's only one location in Tofino, and it allows for five bedrooms, and it's basically a supersized bed and breakfast.
Yeah, but in a way, this is kind of a little bit like a guest house,
This is because the applicant has asked for 8 units, and that for us is more than a lodge, which is up to 6 rooms, and so the next jump up is hotel. Again, the guest zone is more of a CD zone, so I wouldn't use that for me personally, I wouldn't use that as a reference point. But potentially the lodge, which is defined as well, that's more than what our definition of lodge is. It puts it to the hotel, and then there's the corresponding regulations from the BC Code, which also would start to require more.
Okay.
If we were to go something like a guest house type of zoning for 8, then we'd have to think about this not as a hotel, but as a short-term rental, because we'd be looking at actual use as far as staff is concerned, and the whole conversation about permitting additional short-term rental in the communities is a big question in itself. I think that we're stretching ourselves a little bit going to hotel in the downtown core at this time. I think it's appropriate use for where we are, but I don't think I'd want quasi-residential, quasi-commercial, and I think for a number of reasons, again, code, make sure things are safe, and really seriously, our taxation, and how we're being compensated as a community for having accommodation in our town.
Yeah, thank you. I fully agree. Suggested amendment here. I have an amendment prepared for second reading that would take care of removing the health and practitioner services, so that section 441, is it 41? 4.1. 41.0 did at second reading as follows. The words "for a health and wellness retreat" be removed from the preamble, and that section 4102.1 be amended to read ancillary services for guests, including exercise classes and education services. And any questions on that? That's good. All right then, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, that's everybody. Motion carried. So now, second reading, we can consider that, and it would be as has just been amended. So are there any final questions before we go into that last motion? So it would be to move, that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1224 in 2018
Be read
a second time as amended.
It's amended.
And that council
And that
authorized.
council authorized staff to set a date for public.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right. last comment, opportunity for comment? All right, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. All right. And consider second reading of zoning amendment application 1250-2018, which is the Gibson property at 680 Industrial Way. Here we go. Nice bear.
This PowerPoint is approved that I can't follow directions and stuff. The following presentation is, and the proposal received first reading in June of this year. So we're in front of council today for a second reading. Here's our site plan, just to get ourselves familiar with the project. So what's being proposed is a building that looks like this. It'll be F3, a low hazard industrial bay that's proposed to be 2 units of staff housing. So currently on the property, there is 1 unit of staff housing. It's a mobile trailer. I think it's the one in the back right of the screen there, off their property, on our right of way. Staff housing on the property and also down on the property from M3 to M2. And so this is the proposal in front of us. You can see on the site plan at the center top the proposed foundation of the building. Again, as I said, this is for an industrial building. They're also proposing to go for M3, which is heavy industrial, to M2, which is light industrial. The district policy generally supports this. We support industrial uses. The OCP supports down zoning from M3 to M2 towards more light industrial uses of the OCP. And of course, we support staff housing. It is a bit of an interesting one in the sense, or interesting for Tofino, that we have a lot on top, or retail office on top. In Tofino, we seem to have a bit of a niche where we are mixed using industrial uses and housing. So this would be, again, a mixed-use building. There'd be different requirements. Currently, there's an active building permit in the office for this building that we just looked at that has the bottom half as the F3 industrial and 1/2 of the dwelling on top. And so the applicant they're actually allowed to have 1 unit of staff housing and industrial. So at the current time, we're processing that application as a 1 unit housing with this F3 use on the bottom. That means that in the future, if the council decides to move forward with this project, the second half, anything that looks like a dwelling on one side of it, and obviously their intent, and no one's hiding anything, everybody is to be successful in this rezoning and turn that into another unit of staff housing. So through that process forward. So again, similar to the previous one, we're going to go, following this, we would look to go to a public information and public hearing. Third reading, then we looked at developing our housing bylaw and encroachment agreements or removal of
To be addressed at this time, do we change?
I believe
We're getting more and more, or I should say less and less, parking spots on the whole corridor.
I'll have to go back and look at the previous report, but from what I understand in speaking with the industrial use is already permitted and how that get used may incur some future parking requirements. So whatever the areas of the building and the residential uses, they have to provide parking on site. I believe there's enough parking on site for that. Then again, once the units become occupied, if they do become occupied, and I understand these aren't going to be occupied, but if they were to become occupied as commercial uses, then they would go through the business licensing. The parking's on in this report, but I could look into the previous one, but it's my assumption that parking wasn't an issue for the site particularly.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Barton?
Yeah, thanks. One question, one comment. The height requirement's different on Industrial Way because of, say, high shed roofs and housing on top than they are in other parts of the town?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I can't give you a specific, but yes, generally in industrial zones, our maximum height is like 34.5 feet. You'll see in a lot of our industrial zones and some of our like the larger commercial accommodation zones, it's more like 40 feet. Right. So there's nothing outside what's the M3 and the M2 would be the same, so there's no height differences there. I don't believe.
I want to make about Industrial Way, and we are looking at it in the OCP as well, is in this kind of desire to have these work-live spaces and so forth. I still, whether it's about sidewalks or, you know, kind of that streetscape aspect. You know, the area has to be functional, but I don't see, it's such a problem to have some sidewalks with trees, for shading or that aesthetic or that feel that it kind of created so much as beyond its function. But I do think that, I hope that we'll look at some way that there's an aesthetic about that. I always think of that word industrial park, but there's nothing park-like about many of them, but there are about a component. I think we need to look at that park piece in terms of its common meaning a little bit closer. So that's all.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
At the second time, and that the council authorise staff to set a date for a public hearing for District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1250/2018.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Motion carried. Thanks very much. Our CAO is going to present to us about an application for grant funding for the wastewater treatment plant. Thanks, Bob.
In this past summer, council, we had several discussions with the council about a funding opportunity, and we made that application on August 28th per council's authorization. The project cost, just to refresh people's memories, was approximately $55 million, and the grant application that we were able to make at that time was for approximately 73% of that 55 applied for grants under the rural and urban community stream, which would be 100% funding from senior levels of government for this project. And applying for the project to be fully funded from senior levels of government is consistent with direction that, or I don't know about direction, but certainly discussions that have been had at the council table several times, the percent and the 100% that we had talked about back in the summer. Staff spoke with ministry staff and confirmed that we can apply under both programs at the same time. It will be, one or the other or neither. We obviously won't get 173% funding, although it would be nice to turn this into the two grants and still get the 73% and then use the second grant to kind of stack on top and fill that gap up to 100%. So it's going to be a one or the other, but hopefully not neither. Ministry staff were not sure which funding program would be approved first, as announced second, and we would be expected to withdraw our application for the second one, or create an awkward silence. So we feel that this will be a significant part of that funding stream, and given the deadline of 2 weeks from today, we have started some work on preparing that application. And we would like council to endorse sending that application to the province per the council resolution.
Thank you.
I think that's excellent. Thank you for pursuing that. And what more can I say? 100% is the goal because we are carrying the operating costs. And at this point, there are people more
I'll just ask if there's any more questions or comments first, and then we can. Anyone?
That's pretty straightforward.
It's straightforward. It's a long shot, but we have to. I give it a shot. So thank you for bringing it forward.
I do have one other question. In the submission, are we also getting kind of endorsements or support from our MP and MLA and all those things?
We have letters from last time, so
Staff be authorized to submit an application for grant funding for the wastewater treatment plant through the ICIP rural and northern communities.
Thank you. Councillor Bart moved and everyone else seconded, but it has been seconded. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Now we have 2 matters of business that I've initiated. So the first is the Impact Sustainability Travel and Tourism Conference, which takes place January 20th to 23rd, just a few weeks from now, about the conference. And I am here today to ask for your consideration of authorizing me to attend and have my expenses reimbursed, and we can make the right motion if you're willing to hear it. But I just wanted to get any feedback that you had, or state that this is the second year of this conference, and I certainly looked after hearing some very good meeting on sustainable tourism and committee roundtable. Any questions? for a comment? All right. Councillor Anderson?
I'll move to authorize Mayor Osborne's expenses to obtain the contracts, the travel and tours, January 20th to 23rd, 2019.
Thank you. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any comments, questions? Yeah.
I was just going to do a tit for tat, give you support if you give us the committee.
Oh, yeah, right. Hey, that's our decision. We're well on our way.
On the agenda, but
Yeah.
I hear it's coming, so
Thanks.
that's great.
Which is always a good thing. Okay, thank you for that. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. And opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And then the last item of business we have before we have questions from comments from the public is a report that I brought to you. So I'll briefly summarize what I've already written and that you've read, which is that although although there are 3 jurisdictions that form part of the service bylaw that would help to substitute authority over the establishment of the multiplex, in that it's on ACRD lands, and so the decision-making rests at the regional district table. As your representative to the regional district, I think it's really important to get your feedback so that it informs my decision-making and my commentary at the. There was a lot of what we heard in our delegation this morning about some of the background leading up to where we are at today. And tomorrow at the regional district board meeting, we will be considering a report from staff that recommends we delegate the decision about whether and what to say in a letter of support that we provide to the Tualaquit First Nations in their application. So what that does is it gives a little bit more time for the regional district staff to have some dialogue with Tualaquit First Nations and engage with them directly, and as well have somebody from Tualaquit be able to attend the West Coast Committee meeting on the 17th so that all of the directors can speak about it together. So the new information to me as a West Coast district, and so after the decision that Tofino Council made last year around deciding not to support a standalone ice rink facility, but being open to engaging in dialogue with the other communities around a full facility, or was the consideration of a Tualaquing and operating and planning for the renewal of its own facility. And I wasn't aware of some of the conditions of the agreement between the regional district and the federal government when the property was transferred to the regional district for the purposes of an airport. So I think that's the new information that needs to be discussed and better understood. And I've put some details in there, and then I also sent you the report that the regional district staff wrote for us, so you've had a chance to hopefully take a look at that. Providing this information to you, and then asking for any comments or questions that you have, any information that you still would like to have that I can try to get from the regional district, or that I can take forward to the West Coast Community meeting on the 17th. I'll stop there. Okay. Councillor Stewart?
I think just with you're sitting on the West Coast Committee, and at this point the direction is to have that committee make those recommendations, and I think we would of course fully support, I would fully support you in that endeavor, and to have that support if you needed to go forward, absolutely. As our West Coast Committee member, they will being empowered to make that decision in terms of what will be in the content of the support letter.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to give you some more specific feedback.
Sure. Because
I'm not in support. There's nothing that has changed since a year ago when we made the motion. The project that's going is, as you pointed out, this kind of question about the land. One thing that's very positive and substantially changed is the management and operations, something that I think we would be interested in engaging and supporting by Tualaquit. But what that looks like and how that, is shaped in terms of partnership. The other concern that I have is that the granting streams they're going after aren't just the one that has to do with these external Indigenous alternative land use funds, which is substantial in a grant application that we've just encouraged our staff to go to the ICIP, is my understanding. And I can't support that, to have something that's so important and significant to us to resolve and to move forward on, is having 2 applications going in with our signature, as it doesn't favor that. So not only that, I still don't support what's coming forward from the Multiplex Society. I think because it's not addressing what our community has said about what it's looking for. And although I love this idea, in 2008, we created the bylaw. I can't remember exactly, because I know that they came in front of us in that first council term I was in, but where there was this kind of broad endorsement. But essentially, we've been on hold since then on account of this Multiplex Society in terms of kind of community. And fortunately, you know, we've shifted that and we've been supported the gymnasium. And, you know, there's movement, but this community has said they don't particularly support. You know, I just can't support it. So anyway, that's my message from this table.
Thank you. So Chalmers, a question or comment is with the Grand Flex Society and Taloquit haven't quite decided on exactly which stream of funding they're going to apply for, and so one of the streams of funding would not directly compete with the wastewater treatment plant, but the other one would be directly in the same stream.
Okay. Yeah. So I would be concerned about competing directly with the other one. And then I am in support of the multiplex. I think it is a stepping stone to getting a pool. I don't see it as just the ice rink. I think concerns from people I've talked to around town wanting a pool more so, but it is the increase in taxing that really is what, if I'm going to increase my taxes, then I want a pool. But the more that I've kind of learned about it and understanding that there are a lot of other fundings, that would go towards, that would alleviate a lot of the concerns, and it would be sort of an asset to the community.
Thank you.
To me, if Taloquit's applying for moving to own a home facility and should be making a move to secure lands, and it should be a Taloquit project.
I agree.
Thank you. Councillor?
Seems to be possibly acquiring the land and running the project. So I'm in support of moving ahead with that. I think that the regional district through the West Coast Committee should support Taloquit in seeking a grant. I'm not really, if they do end up in the same grant stream, I don't think the liquid waste management grant application would get turned down in favor of a recreation facility. So they may be in competition, but that doesn't mean, even if they do end up in the same grant stream, value of liquid waste far over, more over the recreation facility. So I don't see that as being a big issue. We're not going to lose liquid waste management. There's going to be lots of competition for that. Yeah.
I agree with Councillor Baird in that I'm reticent to have us supporting 2 applications to the same grant stream. While I understand Councillor Anderson's intuition that wastewater treatment would definitely take precedent, allocated, if even a small portion is taken from the wastewater treatment, even if both grants are allowed or are granted, if the wastewater treatment grant loses any heft in order to support a recreation, I would lean towards supporting one to a different grant stream, but not necessarily to the same.
Okay, thank you. Any other final comments? All right, thanks for feedback. Appreciate it.
Well, I just...
They look like they're gonna fall out of the wind.
Yeah, it's, in general, the will of, what I maybe am needing, I think clarification on what I was supporting in your efforts as the West Coast Committee representative is the TFN grant application in and of itself, and that you guys would be looking at how to craft, not necessarily in support of how to move forward with this. Would that be correct?
Well, the West Coast Committee, and there'll be a fuller discussion with the other West Coast directors there. But also I was seeking some feedback in general about the sort of change in course. So the change in course being the consideration of a Tulukwit owned and operated facility, which I'm in support of pursuing and want to advance that conversation. My but is getting this land tenuring question on the table and considering what the options are for the ACRD, and so the highest chance of success, and created the least burden and risk for the local government. I'm still very, very reticent about this project. I think it's a very risky project for local government to take on. And so I want to see, is there a way to move forward where it minimizes risk to the local government, but maximizes the opportunity for Tulukwit? I don't know if that can be had, but, okay. Again, thank you for your feedback, I appreciate it. And it hasn't in the past, we haven't brought a lot of things back from the ACRD to talk at this length of detail like I have the multiplex, but I suspect in this municipal term there'll be a couple of things that I want to bring back and discuss more. So I'm really open to feedback. We haven't really done this a lot in the past, and so any feedback you have at any time about that, I'd be really happy to hear. Okay, good. Warren.
That pair of lots for rezoning, is that a pure coincidence that they're coming together, or there's some plan for both of them to jointly proceed with?
I cannot answer that. And
Coincidence.
Think coincidence. There you
Neighbors
go.
talking to
Our
neighbors.
staff says.
Okay.
Someone would read the motion to go in camera, please.
Move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A, C of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered patients.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. No one opposed. Motion carries.